What if I told you that the room you're sitting in, the chair beneath you, and even the very body you inhabit are nothing more than a sophisticated illusion? What if your consciousness isn't trapped inside your brain, but is actually a frequency vibrating within a massive three-dimensional hologram? For decades, this sounded like the plot of a sci-fi thriller, but on June 9, 1983, it became the official subject of a classified military briefing. A lieutenant colonel named Wayne McDonald sat down to write a report for the U.S. Army that would bridge the gap between hard science and the supernatural. It was the blueprint for a secret CIA program known as the Gateway Process, a mission to investigate if human beings could consciously leave their bodies, travel across the dimensions of space, and navigate the corridors of history itself. The story truly begins in the shadows of the Cold War. In the late 1950s, the CIA received chilling intelligence that the Soviet Union was pouring millions of rubles into psychotronics, the study of ESP, telekinesis, and mind control. Fearing a psychic gap, the Americans realized that if a Soviet agent could mentally view a classified document in the Pentagon, the war was already over. This desperation led them to a man named Robert Monroe. Monroe was a wealthy radio executive, a man of facts and figures, who had started experiencing strange vibrations that led to his consciousness separating from his physical form. He founded the Monroe Institute and developed a technology called Hemi-Sync. By using binaural beats to synchronize the brain's hemispheres, he created a state where the physical body falls into a paralyzed sleep while the mind remains wide awake, alert, and capable of expanding beyond the skin. The CIA realized that if they could master this, they wouldn't just have spies, they would have ghosts. When Lieutenant Colonel McDonald investigated Monroe's work, he stripped away the mysticism and replaced it with the cold language of biophysics. He argued that the human brain is not a producer of thoughts, but a biological antenna tuned to a specific frequency. He described the universe as a giant hologram. In a hologram, every tiny fragment contains the information of the entire whole. If this is true, then every point in space and every moment in history is stored in the energy field surrounding us right now. Our brains usually act as filters, limiting our perception to a linear now just to ensure our survival. The Gateway Process was designed to remove those filters. By synchronizing the brain, a participant could click out of the physical world and click into the universal matrix, where the past, present, and future all happen at once. As the CIA pushed their soldiers deeper into this matrix, they reached a state called Focus 15, the state of no time. To the participants in this state, time was no longer a river flowing in one direction. It was an intervening dimension through which they could move. The CIA documented instances where participants could view events from decades past or glimpse potential futures. One of the most shocking documents from 1984 details a session where a subject, later identified as the legendary Joe McMoneagle, was given coordinates and a time frame of 1 million years BC. He found himself standing on a dying planet, staring at massive pyramids and a race of tall, thin humanoid beings seeking shelter from a planetary catastrophe. The coordinates were for Mars. The CIA wasn't just spying on the enemy anymore. They were using consciousness to look back into the deep, forgotten history of our solar system. But the deeper they went, the more they realized they weren't alone. In the state known as Focus 21, subjects reported meeting non-physical entities, energy beings that seemed to inhabit the folds of the hologram. Some acted as guides through the corridors of time, while others were indifferent gatekeepers. Beyond them lay what McDonald called the absolute, a point of total stillness and infinite energy from which all matter and time emerge. The report reached a conclusion that remains one of the most guarded secrets in military history. Consciousness is not something produced by the brain is merely an antenna for consciousness. This meant that the human soul is immortal, existing as a data stream within the hologram that can never truly be deleted. We are not merely born into this world, nor do we die out of it. We are travelers in an infinite web of energy. Officially, the Gateway process was shuttered in the mid-90s, cited as unreliable. But many believe the program simply went deep black, moving from headphones and binaural beats into advanced neural interface systems hidden from public view. The archive tells us that we are not the limited physical beings we believe ourselves to be. We are architects of a hologram, living in a collective amnesia. The Gateway is not a secret government facility, it is the space between your thoughts. The documents have been released and the door is standing wide open. The only question is whether you are brave enough to walk through it and see the universe for what it truly is, a flickering, beautiful dream from which we are all just beginning to wake up. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. And in the quiet frequency of no time, the journey has only just begun. The year was 1958, and the world was locked in a cold, suffocating embrace between two superpowers. While the public's eyes were fixed on the space race and the looming threat of nuclear silos, a much stranger war was being fought in the shadows. Deep within the Kremlin, the Soviet Union wasn't just building rockets, they were investigating the absolute limits of the human mind. Chilling intelligence reports began to flood into CIA headquarters at Langley, Virginia. The message was clear. The KGB was pouring millions of rubles into psychotronics. They were studying telepathy, distant influence, and mind control. The Pentagon panicked. They feared a psychic gap, a world where Soviet spies could infiltrate top-secret American bunkers, not with lockpicks, but with their thoughts. This desperation to catch up led the CIA to the doorstep of a man who never intended to be a spy. Robert Monroe was the very definition of the American dream. He was a wealthy, logical, and highly successful radio executive living in Westchester, New York. He dealt in facts, figures, and broadcast frequencies. But in the spring of 1958, his reality began to shatter. It started during a quiet afternoon nap. Monroe felt a strange, low-grade hum at the base of his spine. Within weeks, it escalated into what he called the vibrations, a sensation so violent it felt like his very molecules were being shaken apart by an invisible force. Fearing a brain tumor or a total loss of sanity, he sought medical help, but the doctors found nothing. Then, the impossible happened. One night, while the vibrations peaked, Monroe found himself floating against the ceiling. He looked down and saw two people in his bed, his wife and his own lifeless body. Monroe didn't turn to religion for answers, he turned to engineering. He realized that these out-of-body experiences weren't hauntings, they were a state of consciousness that could be mapped. He began experimenting with sound, searching for a way to induce this state scientifically. His breakthrough was a technology called Hemi-Sync, or hemispheric synchronization. He discovered that by playing two slightly different frequencies in each ear, known as binaural beats, he could force the left and right hemispheres of the brain to work in perfect unison. The result was a state of whole brain focus so intense that the physical body would fall into a paralyzed deep sleep, while the mind remained wide awake, alert, and capable of expanding beyond the skin. He founded the Monroe Institute in the quiet hills of Virginia to map this new frontier, unaware that the government was watching his every move. By the late 1970s, the CIA's own psychic program, Project Stargate, was struggling. Their remote viewers were talented, but they lacked a consistent training method. When they heard about the man in Virginia who could teach anyone to leave their body using nothing but headphones and sound waves, they moved in. The CIA didn't want spiritual enlightenment, they wanted tactical consciousness. They recruited a skeptical yet brilliant analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell, and sent him to the Monroe Institute with a mission that sounded like a fever dream. He was to find out if the Army could train soldiers to leave their bodies, fly across the globe in a ghost-like state, and read the classified documents sitting on a desk in the heart of the Soviet Union. McDonnell walked into the Institute a man of cold science, but he was about to author the most mind-bending report in military history. The gateway was officially open, and what they found on the other side would challenge everything we know about time, space, and the human soul. On June 9, 1983, Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell sat down at his desk to draft a document that would become one of the most legendary declassified files in CIA history. He knew that for the military brass to take out-of-body travel seriously, he had to strip away the incense and the mysticism. He had to translate the supernatural into the cold, hard language of biophysics. McDonnell began his report by making a radical claim. The human brain is not a producer of thoughts, but a sophisticated system of energy, a biological antenna tuned to a specific frequency. He explained that through the gateway techniques, the brain reaches a state of such high coherence that it begins to vibrate in harmony with the electrostatic field of the Earth itself. At this frequency, the physical body ceases to be a cage. The participant becomes a standing wave of energy, capable of detaching from the physical senses and interacting with a reality that is invisible to the naked eye. To explain where the consciousness goes once it leaves the body, McDonnell turned to the mind-bending world of quantum mechanics and the theories of Itzhak Bentov. He described the universe not as a vast expanse of empty space, but as a giant hologram. To understand this, imagine a holographic film of an apple. If you cut that film into 1,000 tiny pieces and shine a laser through just one fragment, you don't see a fragment of an apple, you still see the whole apple. This is the fundamental law of the holographic universe. Every tiny part contains the information of the entire whole. McDonnell argued that every moment in history, every point in space, and every potential future is stored within the energy field surrounding us right now. The past isn't behind us, and the future isn't ahead. They're all happening simultaneously in a massive flickering matrix of energy. But if this infinite library of information is all around us, why can't we see it? The report provides a chilling answer. Our brains are evolved filters. To ensure our survival in a physical world, our minds limit our perception to a linear now. We're like people staring through a tiny keyhole, convinced that the sliver of light we see is the only thing that exists. The gateway process was designed to kick the door open. By synchronizing the brain's hemispheres, the program allowed participants to bypass the filter of the physical senses. They weren't just imagining other places, they were tuning their internal frequency to match the frequency of different parts of the hologram. To the CIA, this was the ultimate breakthrough. It meant that space and time were no longer obstacles, but merely coordinates in a digital-like grid that a trained mind could navigate at will. The physical world was revealed to be a mere shadow, a 3D projection of a much deeper, much more complex energetic reality. As the theoretical foundation of the holographic universe was laid, the gateway process shifted from a classroom lecture into a chilling, operational reality. For the soldiers and intelligence officers at the Monroe Institute, the journey began inside the tuning chambers. darkened, soundproofed booths where the physical world was systematically stripped away. They would lie for hours wearing heavy headphones, guided by the calm, hypnotic voice of Robert Monroe. Through the Hemi-Sync process, they were taught to climb a ladder of consciousness, moving beyond the physical self into states of being that defy traditional logic. It started with Focus 10, a state where the body is in a state of paralyzed sleep, but the mind is perfectly, vibrantly awake. But the CIA wasn't looking for relaxation. They were looking for a breakthrough. They pushed the participants further into the expanded awareness of Focus 12, and finally into the most guarded state of the program, Focus 15. In the lexicon of the Gateway, Focus 15 was known as the state of no time. Participants described it as a silent gray expanse, a vast featureless void that felt like the womb of the universe. In this state, the heartbeat of the physical world disappears. The linear flow of time, which we perceive as a river moving from the past to the future, simply stops. To an intelligence officer in Focus 15, time was no longer a sequence of events. It was a map spread out on a table. Every historical moment and every potential future existed simultaneously. This wasn't the time travel of Hollywood movies where a person disappears in a flash of light. It was a mental projection where the consciousness accessed the universal hologram. The CIA realized that if a viewer could stabilize themselves in Focus 15, they could observe a secret Soviet meeting from 1962 or a missile launch scheduled for the year 2000 with the same level of clarity as if they were standing in the room. However, navigating this intervening dimension came with a profound psychological cost. The documents hint at click-out incidents, where participants' minds would spontaneously detach from the narrative of their own lives. They would return from these sessions with leaked memories, vivid recollections of lives they had never lived, or glimpses of futures that felt hauntingly inevitable. There was a growing realization within the program that the human mind wasn't just observing these other times, it was being changed by them. The psychic spies began to report that the physical world felt fake or heavy, like a poorly fitting suit they were forced to wear. Even more unsettling were the reports of a frequency-following response outside of the lab. Some officers found themselves slipping into out-of-body states while driving or eating dinner, as if the veil between this reality and the next had become dangerously thin. But the mission continued. The CIA was obsessed with the intervention theory, the idea that if you could see the future in the state of no time, you might be able to nudge it. They were looking for the God switch, the ability to not only spy on the hologram of time, but to rewrite it. They were no longer just soldiers, they were becoming the accidental architects of reality, standing on the precipice of a power that no government was ever meant to possess. By May of 1984, the CIA's confidence in the Gateway process reached a level that bordered on the surreal. They were no longer content with viewing secret Soviet bunkers or tracking submarines in the Atlantic. They wanted to test the absolute limits of the holographic matrix. On the morning of May 22nd, a session took place that would become the most legendary and disturbing file in the entire archive. A subject, identified in the documents as Remote Viewer 001, later revealed to be the elite psychic spy Joe McMoneagle, was handed a sealed envelope containing a 3x5 index card. McMoneagle had no idea what was written on that card. He was simply told to relax, enter a deep trance, and follow the coordinates provided by his monitor. As McMoneagle's consciousness slipped into the state of no time, the monitor read out the first set of coordinates and a specific time frame, 1 million years BC. In an instant, McMoneagle wasn't in a quiet room in Maryland anymore. He described a world of staggering, violent beauty. He spoke of massive, swirling dust storms that blotted out the sun and jagged, metallic-looking mountains. But then his voice took on a tone of profound shock. He began to describe colossal pyramid-like structures and smooth geometric monoliths that stretched toward a darkening sky. He wasn't looking at Earth, he was looking at Mars. He described a planet in the throes of a global environmental collapse, a world that was gasping its final breaths. But the most haunting part of the transcript wasn't the landscape, it was the people. McMoneagle reported seeing a race of very tall, very thin humanoid beings. He described them as ancient people, dressed in shimmering, silk-like robes, their faces etched with a deep, silent sorrow. They weren't the little green men of science fiction. They were a sophisticated civilization in mourning. McMoneagle watched as they sought shelter in the shadows of their decaying monuments, their minds linked in a desperate collective attempt to survive the atmospheric catastrophe. He felt their overwhelming sense of loss as they waited for a rescue party that would never come. They were hibernating, hoping to outlast the death of their world, unaware that 1,000,000 years later, their home would be nothing but a frozen red desert. This session sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. It proved that the gateway process wasn't just a spy tool, it was a cosmic passport. The CIA realized that through the holographic universe, they could bypass the fossil record and the limitations of archaeology altogether. They were no longer just looking at human history, they were looking at the deep, forgotten history of the solar system itself. But as they looked back into the dust of Mars, a chilling realization began to dawn on the officers overseeing the project. If a civilization that advanced could turn to dust, what does that mean for us? And more importantly, if consciousness could survive for 1,000,000 years to be seen by a psychic in 1984, then where did these beings go? The mission was no longer about winning the Cold War, it was about understanding our place in a universe that was far older and far more crowded than anyone had ever dared to imagine. As the CIA pushed deeper into the holographic matrix, they eventually reached a boundary where human logic began to dissolve. They moved beyond the gray silence of no time and entered the deepest levels of the gateway, specifically a state known as Focus 21. In the official documents, this is dryly referred to as the bridge to other energy systems. But for the participants, it was something far more profound and far more terrifying. They were no longer just observing the past or the future, they were leaving the human sphere of influence entirely. It was here that the psychic spies realized the universe was not an empty vacuum of cold stars, but a crowded, vibrating ecosystem teeming with intelligence. The participants began to report encounters with what the McDonnell Report calls non-physical entities. These weren't the ghosts of folklore or the aliens of pop culture. They were described as patterns of pure energy, some appearing as radiant beings of light, and others as shadow people standing at the extreme periphery of mental vision. Some of these entities acted as guides, helping the travelers navigate the non-linear corridors of the hologram. Others were indifferent, and some were described as gatekeepers who would actively block a remote viewer from accessing certain high-probability futures. There was a chilling realization within the program. The CIA hadn't just discovered a new way to spy, they had broken into a house where someone else already lived. But the most earth-shattering discovery lay even deeper, at a point the researchers called the absolute. McDonnell described this as a state of total stillness, a point of infinite energy at the very center of the universe, from which all matter, time, and consciousness emerge. To the mystics, this was God. To the CIA, it was the ultimate source. The data suggested that our three-dimensional life is merely a frequency excursion from this source. We are like rays of light emanating from a sun, so caught up in our own shadows that we have forgotten we are the sun itself. This led to a conclusion that was too explosive for the public. Consciousness is not something produced by the brain. Instead, the brain is a biological antenna, and you, the core of your being, are a data stream that exists independently of the body. You are immortal, not because of a religious promise, but because you are a fundamental part of the universal hologram that can never truly be deleted. This revelation hit the military brass like a freight train. They had started the gateway process to gain a tactical advantage in the Cold War, but they had stumbled upon the God switch. They began to investigate intervention theory, the idea that if you could reach the state of Focus 21, you could not only see the future, but nudge the probabilities of reality itself. However, with this power came a profound sense of dread. The handlers realized that if every human being discovered their latent ability to transcend time and space, the traditional structures of power, governments, borders, and secrets would become obsolete overnight. They were looking at the third rail of quantum physics, the possibility that by observing the future, they were accidentally collapsing the wave function and creating the very events they were trying to prevent. The project was no longer a training manual, it was a map to a territory that humanity might not be ready to inhabit. Deep within the classified archives, the tone shifted from curiosity to caution. They had peered behind the curtain of creation, only to realize that the universe was looking back. As the 1990s dawned, a heavy curtain of silence began to fall over the gateway process. After decades of exploration into the far reaches of the human mind, the official word from Washington was that the program had been a failure. In 1995, the CIA officially shuttered Project Stargate, citing a lack of actionable intelligence. They claimed that while the remote viewers were sometimes accurate, they were too inconsistent for the high-stakes world of military espionage. But to those who had walked the gray plains of no time and felt the vibration of the absolute, this official narrative felt like a carefully crafted lie. You don't discover a way to view the deep history of Mars or prove the immortality of the soul and then simply throw the files into a trash can. The truth, they say, is far more chilling. The program didn't end, it went deep black. When you discover that consciousness can influence the material world and that time is merely a coordinate in a holographic matrix, you don't share that power with the public. You move it into the shadows of unacknowledged special access programs, far beyond the reach of congressional oversight. There are whispers that the crude headphones and binaural beats of the 80s have been replaced by advanced neural interface systems, technology that allows travelers to navigate the universal hologram with the precision of a GPS. They aren't just looking at the future anymore. They are using the God switch to ensure certain outcomes, quietly nudging the probability lines of our reality from behind a veil of absolute secrecy. But what of the travelers themselves? For the men and women who underwent the gateway experience, the world could never be the same. They had seen the blueprint of the universe, and it made the concerns of the physical world, money, politics, and borders, seem like the games of children. They returned to their lives with a haunting realization that we are living in a state of collective amnesia. We have been taught to believe we are limited biological machines destined to live for 80 years and then vanish into nothingness. The Gateway Archive tells us the exact opposite. It suggests that every person you have ever loved, every version of the person you might become, and every moment of your life is etched forever into the fabric of the universe. Death is not an ending, it is merely a frequency shift, a return to the absolute from which we all emerged. As we stand here today, looking back at these declassified pages, we are left with a final profound realization. The Gateway isn't a secret government facility in Virginia, and it isn't a classified document hidden in the CIA's digital archives. The Gateway is the space between your thoughts. It is the silence behind the noise of your daily life. The CIA spent millions to weaponize this truth, but the truth itself is more profound. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. The past is a memory frequency, and the future is a probability, both vibrating in your mind right this second. The documents have been released, the door is standing open. The only question that remains is whether you are brave enough to walk through it, to shed the illusion of the physical, and to finally wake up from the beautiful dream we call reality. The gateway isn't a secret facility or a classified document, it is the space between your thoughts. The CIA spent millions to weaponize this truth, but the truth itself is more profound. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. The past is a memory frequency, and the future is a probability, both vibrating in your mind right this second. The documents have been released, the door is standing open. The only question that remains is whether you are brave enough to walk through it, to shed the illusion of the physical, and to finally wake up from the beautiful dream we call reality. The gateway isn't a secret facility or classified document. It is the space between your thoughts. The CIA spent millions to weaponize this truth, but the truth itself is more profound. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a single drop. The past is a memory frequency, and the future is a probability, both vibrating in your mind right now. The documents have been released, and the door is standing open. The only question is, are you brave enough to walk through it and see the universe for what it truly is?
If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more hidden history, real mysteries, and untold stories. Let us know in the comments what kind of story you'd like to see next. Your ideas help shape future videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.